Dimitri Roberts joins me now. He is a law enforcement analyst and a former officer with the Chicago Police Department. Dimitri, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. So today marks the 9th month of 2020, and during the last 6 months, we've had our movements all restricted due to the coronavirus pandemic. So why are we seeing such a surge in the number of homicides in large cities across the country?
Well, it's the reason we've seen homicide spike so many other times throughout our history, and that is, folks that have ill intent and intend to inflict violence and harm on the communities that they live in are not going to be swayed by the coronavirus or anything else. So this is something that we can look at a human behavioral level and better understand what we can do to address this. But at the end of the day, criminals don't care about the coronavirus. If anything, they're looking at it as an opportunity to further their criminal activities.
So what challenges then does this present to law enforcement across the country, trying to battle this rise in crime while also having to deal with this pandemic?
Yeah, I think it only escalates the amount of already overburdened tasks that police officers have to wear or have to put forth. That effort is only increasing day by day, but in some areas, rightfully so, especially when it relates to officers taking a more thoughtful approach to how they deal with situations. So again, when we talk about defunding police, when we talk about making statements that say we don't need police anymore, and we see a rise in violent crime, we have to really understand that there is a true criminal element out there that needs to be dealt with, and only police officers are equipped to do that. That doesn't mean that their tactics or procedures don't need to shift or change some. But I think, again, if we take an all-encompassing approach and we stop looking at blue versus community or community versus blue, then we can come up with some sensible solutions that everybody can get behind.
Sounds very sensible. Now, let's drill down on one large city in particular, one that you are very familiar with, Chicago. There have been 145 more murders in the city of Chicago this year than in all of 2019. Still, according to the Chicago Police Department, the murder rate in August was 45% lower than in July, and the number of shooting incidents declined by 15% as well when compared to the previous month. So why are we seeing a decline in violence in Chicago in August?
Yeah, well, I think that this is part of the narrative that really has to change, and especially on a national level. Look, a life is a life, and it doesn't matter whether it's dropped 15% or up 45%. We're talking about people's lives, and we're talking about the fact that whatever that percentage may be, it's attached to somebody's family, it's attached to somebody's loved one. And so regardless of what we see the fluctuation in numbers might be, we see that there's a national crisis that really needs all of our attention. And we can't do that divided. We can't do that by looking and pointing fingers at one side or the other, when both sides, both the community as well as law enforcement agencies, particularly in Chicago, have to take more accountability for how they're addressing issues that are going on in both the communities that they live in and the communities that they serve. At the end of the day, the weather is getting a little cooler, and we always see when the weather cools off in areas like Chicago that the crime usually reduces. And then we have coronavirus. So there's a bunch of little nuances there that we can talk about. But at the end of the day, whether it's a 1% increase or 1% decrease, that still is attached to somebody's life. And that's what I think we need to be focused on.
Now, drawing on your experience, how would you like to see the blue and community relationship evolve in a way that's helpful for everyone?
Well, I think that there needs to be a new accountability system put in place. Currently, there is no way for a citizen to rate their experience with a law enforcement officer in real time. Now, a citizen can make a complaint, but there's no way to say whether this officer gave you great service or whether they gave you poor service, or whether they saved your life, or whether they were abusive. So I think nationally and at the department levels, there needs to be a new accountability system put in place. No different than you would rate your Uber driver, right? You can tell somebody that, hey, my food was cold when it got here, but you can't say that, hey, I either had great police service or I had poor police service. So I think technology is the key to getting us to a better place in what we want to do as far as our community and policing engagements are concerned.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. Sticking with Chicago, it is proud of a couple new programs launched this year to reduce violence in the city. However, over this past weekend, there was a step backward as at least 55 people were shot in Chicago, including 2 police officers. When something like this happens over a weekend, what does it mean for the department? Will this automatically lead to increased policing across the city?
Well, not necessarily just across the city, but absolutely in those areas where violent crime is spiking. And I think this is a call to community members to say, hey, here's the first step, but also a call to the police department, particularly in Chicago, to say, hey, we don't have to always take an adversarial approach to these situations. Tragic as they may be, let's use them as opportunities for better engagement. And right now, in my mind, the community members that are in those communities for which these incidents have happened should be sitting down with the police, with the community policing office, with the commanders of those districts for which those shootings happen, and having a conversation and sharing information. We're beyond the day where community members are saying, we don't talk to police and we're not going to share information, but as well as police saying, we're going to take a quasi-militarized approach to addressing these issues in your communities. So again, we can turn tragedy into an opportunity for peace and healing, but that has to be done on both sides. And that's my call to action here today, is that, hey, this is simple, guys. Just sit down and have a conversation and say, we don't want any more bloodshed in our streets. That's both on the police side or on the citizen side, because at the end of the day, as I've said before, no matter whether you wear a blue uniform or whether you wear a suit as a citizen, at the end of the day, we all bleed the same color. And nobody wants to see this continuing to happen in our communities, our cities, or our country.
Dimitri Roberts, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.